We should have. I know we should. We should have Jalen create our specific better together.
You're not missing much.
Google background music for news intro on Google. Hello, everyone. Those of you out there in Zoom world.
Zoom world.
Yeah.
Nice to see familiar faces. Hello. Hi, Laura. Thanks for being here.
Gibbs.
Yo, what's up, fam?
Yo!
Hey, Mark, there he is.
Do what it do. Y'all look good, man.
Look at that face.
Look, do you guys know how cool DeMarco is? Let me tell you how cool DeMarco is.
Not cool at all.
My son Matthew, at one point, asked if he and DeMarco could like just kind of chat and talk it up. And then weeks went by, DeMarco forgot because he got busy. And then he just texted Matthew out of the blue one day. And he's like, "Yo, let's connect." And so they ended up talking for like an hour and a half and made beats together.
Oh,
I went down. I was like, "Hey, DeMarco, how's it going?" And he's like, "Great." I'm like, "All right, talk to you later." And then they were going for like an hour and a half. That was cool.
so awesome.
That's
Love
so
that.
talented, yo. He's so talented. And like I had some things, like I got sick. My best friend lost his mom. So we just kind of been going through some things, like, you know, just week after week. And like Matt is so cool. He's so talented. Like he's amazing, yo. Like Lil Swole really got skills, like for real.
He would have been on, but he's writing a paper right now.
Oh.
And he's studious. Look at him.
Yeah, he's not happy about it.
That's where I need to be right now.
But he's doing it.
So good to see y'all though. Ashley, the picture of Cal in the Carhartt hat today. Oh my God. Sign the baby model up. Like I'm looking at Adrian. Like, dude is ready to make way.
Thank you. Would agree. I would totally agree.
Yeah.
Cedric,
Hey,
I
Cedric.
see you.
What's up?
What
up, Seb?
Hello.
What's up, Killmonger?
What do you think? One more minute?
Yeah, let's give it one more minute.
1 minute.
I sent the reminder late. It's my fault. I'm sorry.
Not your fault. We forgive you.
But we'll record it and we can always send it to
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
who couldn't be here live.
Yes,
so.
please, Natalie. Thank you.
That was your binder.
That was my cue. On it. Oh goodness.
Beautiful. No, I think we can start when you guys.
Yeah. You ready now? I am ready. Hello everyone. Welcome back to our Better Together series for episode 7. We were just talking about it. So crazy. We're on episode 7 already. So thank you for your continued support and continuing to show up and your dedication to learning and growing with us. This started as a place for us to just kind of understand and grow together and talk together, and it continues to serve that purpose. We like to say at the beginning of every episode, we are not experts. We're just people who really are interested in bettering ourselves and doing it as a community. But we all represent our own viewpoints, the speakers, the moderators, everyone in the comments. Just a reminder that this series does take place the second Wednesday of every month, which means our next episode will be November 11th at 7 p.m. And the link that we're using for tonight can be used for all Better Together episodes until June 2021. So make sure you save it and share it with everybody you know.
We're really glad to have you on tonight for episode 7. As have been happening for the past 2 episodes, Natalie and I will be moderating the session, and then we have some guest speakers on here with us. And tonight, as you may have seen on social media or some emails that we sent out, our topic is about role models. We felt like this was really pertinent to what's happening in the world right now. And as we'll continue on and start our session with asking questions from those who are speaking today, knowing that everyone looks for role models throughout their life, wherever they are. And this is just the perfect time and discuss you can look for. And we have 2 really, really special, incredible speakers that are joining us today, Jalen and Brent, 2 from our Snowball and CGTI community. These 2 are absolutely incredible. I feel like we can talk for days on all they've done for our programs, all they continue to do for the youth across the state of Illinois and beyond. But we're here to listen to them talk. So I'm going to pass it over to the 2 of them to introduce themselves and maybe share a little bit about their connection and how they know each other.
Riley, Natalie, thank y'all so much for hosting tonight. My name is Jalen Little, and I am a product of CGTI. Because of the person we're getting ready to converse with tonight. Big Swole.
I am Brent Swalski, otherwise known as Big Swall, and that was a name that was coined by Operation Snowball. Talk a lot about that in a little bit. I am a counselor at Schaumburg High School. I've been doing that for going on my 16th year. I've been at Schaumburg for 20. But I am officially Ohio born and bred. And even though I've been in Illinois for longer than I was actually in Ohio at this point, everything I talk about comes back to Cleveland in Ohio. And you'll learn that if you ever get to sit with me and talk with me. So very happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you both for being here. Like Riley said, you are 2 pretty huge names and faces in our community through your work with your students, but also through your speaking. So we're really glad to have you. So let's just start with the basics. What does it mean to be a role model or a mentor? And what is it important about that connection between a mentor and the mentee that distinguishes from any other relationship, like a teacher to a student? Brent, I'm going to let you take this one first.
Okay. I think that if you break it down, like the short of it, it really comes down to a give and take. Like you almost have to have this like unwritten mutual understanding that you're about to go on this journey together. And it's not something that happens right away. It just evolves over time. I kind of share how Jalen and I kind of got to this place. It all started, and people who've heard this story before will know that it all started with pizza. I was doing a focus group with Laura Larson Gibbons, who's actually on the call right now. This was probably circa 2007 or 8, and Jalen was a sophomore at Schaumburg. Had no connection to anything other than me. Like from the 2 of us, other than just seeing each other in the hall and be like, "What's up?" I didn't even know his name, but we were short on people, and I had run out into the hallway to try to just summon people, and Jalen happened to be walking by. I'm like, "Yo, you want pizza?" And he goes, "Yeah," and he jumped in, and I was like, "Yeah, come on and get some pizza." I was like, "Hey, while you're here, we just want to ask you a bunch of questions. Do you mind sticking around during your lunch?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." And it really was that moment that we didn't even realize had kind of served as the catalyst for what ended up being a really great connection between the 2 of us, and it's ultimately turned into this lifelong friendship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that day vividly because, first of all, I was super hungry, as every freshman, sophomore, junior, senior high school is, right, throughout the day. But what was so interesting about that time period in my life was that that was a time where I felt like divine timing. I had a lot going on in my life as a freshman and a sophomore. I mean, I come from a background of a single mother who was taking care of me, sister, and so for me, it was like at that time things were a little rocky. And I remember meeting Swole, meeting Laura, meeting Jake from the Kenneth Young Center, eating pizza in one of the conference rooms at Schaumburg, and thinking to myself like, how did I end up here? Wait, you want me to do this survey on prevention happening? Like, okay, so but as that started happening, a couple weeks later, Swole invited me and a couple of others to a meeting, introducing this teen camp called ITI. Brought all of our parents there. I remember bringing my mom there, saying, "Hey, mom, I think I'm gonna go to this summer camp, and yeah, it's gonna be a good time. I'm not sure what to expect." And I had never been to a camp ever, so this is like, to me, I'm imagining we're gonna go out into the woods, we're gonna have tents.
I wasn't there.
Like a camp, right? No, it wasn't that. And from there, we went to our first camp in 2008, 2009. And yeah, here we are today.
You know, and just thinking about the relationship, and I recall, like you said, like you remember that moment vividly in with that pizza moment, and there were like several moments throughout our journey that just stand out. And one of those times was at the first CGTI. It was ITI at the time, and it was I believe it was Monmouth College, and there we are sitting in the cafeteria. We just kind of found ourselves getting food together, grabbing a table together, and just the two of us started just talking. And that's where I learned that Jalen was not only a hater of math, like me, couldn't do it, but he was a lover of words. And he talked about how he really enjoyed English, and that was like his passion is the use of words, and how he was influenced by his mom. And I remember just sitting there and just listening to that story about, and just listening to him talk. And then you started to see the beginnings of his philosophies really kind of playing out, that still to this day ring true. And so, you know, it talks about that journey, that like in order to really see that path emerge, you have to be willing to listen to the person in front of you. And so I recall that moment. It stood out among so many great moments of that week, but that was one that like it just, I see it. I'm like replaying it in my mind right now, as clear as it was that day.
Yeah, and I think at that moment, you know, for me, Swole, along with the 8 other members in our group at that time, we, like you mentioned at the top of the conversation, it was that give and take. And with you, we understood that you were giving us the opportunity to go back into the community and to make a everlasting impact both in the school and the places around the school. And I think that right there is what served as a first model of you becoming our role model, right? You becoming that person who we were looking to. And I think that a role model is somebody who can inspire those around them to make action or change towards you know, an outcome that serves the greater good, right? And so recognizing that at that time, we knew that, okay, go back, do this Operation Snowball thing, get everybody involved, get everybody rallied around, you know, these different components of our humanity. All right, this guy is giving pizza. He's going to help us get there. But also, I could learn a lot from this person. And for me, I know I have always looked at that light of how role models come into our lives like you did. And sometimes it just happens. It just happens because of that spark of being in the hallway. Sometimes it can happen at a Starbucks. Sometimes it can happen, you know, and you know, I think that is the solid foundation of, you know, we day.
As of pinpoint these like watershed moments that made it what it was. I think that one of the best things about this program is a lot of people have had that similar experience with their mentor, with someone on staff, but that this is also a place where they can come to these organizations and say, this is what I'm looking for. And you offer a great example of that. And I think that's really cool for all of us to witness.
Thank you.
How special knowing that you remember specific conversations that happened 11, 12 years ago, and how here it may seem small to us, but how monumental it was to your life individually and just your connection as you've continued to grow over the years. Really cool. So next, as we're looking at the group of people who are on this call, right? So we have a few youth, but a majority of the people on this call are adults. And I think this next question is really up our alley, because recognizing that so many of you are here because you know these two people and you know how incredible they are, you're also here to learn and to be a better mentor. And I know in your hearts, just listening to you all look intently at them, how much that means to you, because so many of you are involved in our programs. So the next question we want to ask Jalen and Brent are, what are some key tips that you can give about finding a role model or a mentor in your community? Where should youth look and what should they look for? What are you wanting to gain from a mentee or mentee-mentor relationship? And what are you willing to give, right? It's not just a one-sided street. There's always two components in a relationship. So we're going to have Jalen go ahead and give his response first.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Riley. I think the first tip that I could offer in that pursuit or search of a mentor is to allow yourself to be open to the possibility of learning from somebody who is doing the things that resonate with you, and the things that really inspire you to become a better version of yourself. Find people who are aligned with that and allow yourself to be open to what they may have to offer. And I think what it first fundamentally starts off with is just building a foundation of a relationship, right? So what this could be is making sure that you communicate with this person and say, hey, I want to ask questions about you and what you do and how you've gotten here, because that really inspires me, or I'm just curious about that. And I think that when we start to become more curious and interested in the lives of people who inspire us, people are more giving of information than we think. My brother Alan told me this a while ago. He told me something that stuck with me, because as a life coach, he is a role model in a lot of different people's lives. And he told me that people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And so I think that when you show somebody that you really look up to, that you care about them and what they're doing, they're gonna, in return, care about what you're doing and help you to create your own unique journey, to wherever that destination may lead you. So I think, fundamentally is just starting with building an organic relationship and being curious about, a potential mentor, and staying open, keeping the possibilities of life open. So, and I know there were like 4 different components of that question, so I wanted to just touch on the first one and then just keep going back.
That was perfect. You don't have to answer every single one. Whatever flows in your mind first.
That's Jalen's
Perfect.
next keynote presentation. Write them down. It's interesting because I'm listening to that, and I'm listening to this idea about being curious and letting that curiosity help drive that connection. And I think a lot of that goes back to what I talked earlier about in terms of listening and just asking that question. And you can do this as a youth, but you can also do this as an adult who's kind of seeing that a relationship with a youth go down this path. And the question you should ask yourself is who's listening to you, right? Like, are you listening to this person? Are they listening to you? Who's going beyond the expectations of a traditional adult, whether that's in education or in the community or coaching, like if they're fulfilling their role, then that's fine. But if they're going beyond that expectation to make that connection, to actually listen to you, that's another thing to be aware of. And most importantly is who makes you laugh. Like if you're interacting with somebody and you have this relationship forming, whether it's, like I said, whether it's education or coaching or if it's a pastor or there's somebody in the community, if you make that person laugh, like genuinely laugh, that's a connection that goes beyond those like traditional expectations and vice versa. And I will tell you like that, like there were times when I was dying over the stuff that Jalen did. Like it was just funny. Like it's just like whatever he said, like there's just times when you just start laughing. And I think that that's a key piece to it, that if you can make somebody laugh and they can make you laugh genuinely, that's building that connection as well. Also to kind of add to what you were saying that Alan, your brother has shared about, like you can't, what was it? You can't show someone, you can't care. What does it say it again?
Oh yeah, Alan mentioned that people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care.
Yep, and that sparked a quote that I like and kind of revere by Maya Angelou, and that I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And so that connection, that like empathetic connection that drives relationships is super important.
Just hearing the two of you talk, I think it's very evident how much you care about each other, but how much you care about your relationship and growing together as well. And I think that's just a huge component about you as people. But it's not just given to a mentor mentee. You give that out to people every day. And that's what makes people look up to the both of you. Because Jalen, in this relationship with the two of you, you may be the mentee and Brent is your mentor. But there's so many people that attend CGTI and Operation Snowball that also look up to you and see you as a mentor. And I see many things that you've maybe taken from your relationship with Brent, but also things that you've adapted in your own too, because you care in your own way. And I think that's what makes relationships of mentor mentees so special. And like you already repeated once, Jalen, I think it's a super great quote that I've never heard before. People don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care, right? Make that connection with someone first, and then that's the basis for everything.
Yeah, absolutely, Riley. And I think with what's so unique about TI, right, is that amongst ourselves as peers, we're all mentors to each other. We switch those roles so many times, and it becomes this, I'd like to say we become each other's micro mentors and mentees, right? Where we say, hey, Ashley, you're planning an entire everything, like what are you doing? How can I learn how to do that? Or you're doing this, you're doing that, wait. And I think that those roles always shift and change, which is what makes TI, right? And and I think that when we allow ourselves to be open to learning while also being open to leading, we can live a much more harmonious life. And yeah, I think that's what fundamentally we need is to be able to look up to people while also leading people. And yeah, process just continues.
Well, and we talk about role models, and I'm sure we'll be talking about influencers in a minute, but I think there is a time when, and just kind of touch on what you're saying, Jalen, is that when the mentor-mentee dynamic starts to shift, you give it enough time, you give enough experiences, you give enough trust, and the mentor oftentimes becomes the mentee. There are a lot of times where like Jalen and I will sit and we'll just kind of wax a little philosophy, and I come away a much more learned person than when I was when we entered that conversation. And like Jalen's no spring chicken anymore. Like he's seasoned. So he's got wisdom, right? With age comes wisdom and reflection and experience, and that's that's an important thing to be aware of. So like you stick around with somebody long enough and you end up learning when you might have been the teacher at some point, you know?
I love that. Staying curious no matter where you're at and how your relationship has grown over the years. Absolutely. Great points, two of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really great point about having that connection, where you feel something beyond just a base level relationship. And that kind of leads into our next question, that it's important to bring up representation and make sure that youth find themselves represented in their role models by way of race and gender and orientation, all these other distinguishing identities that we all carry. So what can you say about why it's important to find role models that represent the diversity of our organizations and communities? I'm going to let you answer that one first, Brent.
I know that in our culture these days, especially recently, there's an importance to acknowledge diversity in our communities, right? I can't stress enough the connection between appreciating someone's point of view and knowing that that might be different from yours, or a shared experience, or even if this experience is different, finding that common ground. But I think sharing philosophies is very important. You know, it transcends culture, race, identity. If you can understand that your philosophy is kind of aligned with somebody else's, that's what helps create that connection. There's a person that has been in the community. He's a pretty interesting guy. His name is Kareem Wells. Goes by the name Quo. You should look him up on Instagram. He's all over the place. He's got some really cool stuff. He's also been working with Matthew on beat making and the whole process. But he likes to post this phrase: listen to learn, to educate, to heal, for change. And he plasters that concept all over his posts and all over his ideas. It becomes a part of his philosophy. And I thought that really rings true when you're trying to make connections with people that might not have shared that same experience growing up. If you can listen to that person, you can learn from them, you can then educate somebody else, and then that could help a healing process for somebody who might have experienced the trauma. Because our goal is to change, you know, that we want to change and grow and improve. And I think that is a key component when you're building relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. That kind of what you said just kind of reminds me of like the snowball effect of you have this mentor who shares a different experience from their mentee, but then they can share that and teach them, and then that mentee will go on to be a mentor for somebody else and share that experience as well. And it's kind of the foundation of what we do. Jalen, do you want to add anything?
You know, Big Swell, I thought that was a really valid point. It's like you really do have to take a step back and really understand that this person comes from a different background than you. This person may come from, a lineage of different components that may have altered their life to not be on the same track as whoever else. And I think that when you are building a mentor-mentee relationship with somebody who shares a different religion, color, creed, whatever, I think it's important to first ask them, you know, once the relationship builds, ask them, hey, how can I better understand you? How can I better understand what you are going through or what is relevant with the times right now? Right now at Harper College, where I work at as an admissions specialist, I'm joining this mentor-mentee program called 1 Million Degrees. And so within this program, I'm going to be paired up with somebody who is, living in Chicago right now, has been through a couple of situations where I will need to equip myself with the tools to understand how can I best serve this person in the situation that is presented to them in this moment, right? And I think that when we just equip ourselves with the right tools to understand people better and where they come from, I think that creates a much better pillar of sustaining a relationship, especially as a mentor-mentee. So, but I think that finding people who share, like Swole says, share the same values and philosophies as us is the best thing you can do. But if you do come across somebody who is maybe in an industry or field that is outside of, or if you find somebody in an industry or field that resonates with what you want to do, but they may not share the same philosophies, I would first start off by asking them questions and making sure this person is somebody who you can resonate with, because you can always tell, right? Energy speaks for itself. And if obviously a person's philosophy doesn't match up or makes you feel a certain way, then you can unapologetically walk away from that. And if it doesn't serve you, but the goal is to always resonate with a person who may come from a different background than you, and find common mutual ground that can be the foundation of building a sustainable relationship. So.
Yep, I agree. I mean, if you were to put, and Jalen and I have talked to each other about our upbringings. Like, I probably learned about Jalen's life growing up earlier than he learned about mine. But if you put them side by side, we lived very different lives growing up. Yeah. Right. Like it couldn't be more opposite from me. It's like, boom. But at some point, there were experiences that we shared. They were, again, completely different from one another that tapped into the same emotional response. And it's something that I talk about even in my talks and my presentations, that if I'm hearing a story, it's not going to be the exact same story. I never experienced something exactly the same way, but I might tap into an emotional response from another experience in my life that person is trying to convey. And when you make that empathetic connection, it opens the door to wanting to understand more about that person. And I think that's the point that Jalen was getting at, is that, like, if you have somebody in your life that has shared a similar experience or a similar background as you, that's like bonus, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. You can still have complementary philosophies and still kind of share that common bond, even if you had different experiences along the way.
Yep. And I feel too that you want to be able to surround yourself with people who are going to champion for your humanity. You want to surround yourself with people who are going to stand up when things get rough out in society, when things get rough out in wherever, online. These people are going to be the people who will say, hey, I'm not standing by, but I'm standing up with you. You know what I mean? And, those are the type of people, mentors, mentees, peers that you want to surround yourself with, right? So.
You guys just said so much good stuff. I think there's so much to take away just from those answers about how you can walk away from things that don't serve you. You can get to know multiple people that you're interested in being your mentor and choose what works for you on that philosophical level, but also on maybe that understanding of similar upbringings, maybe not. I think there's so much you can do as long as that serves you and it equips you and it supports you, and vice versa. You guys are saying so many great things. I don't even know how to sum it up because it's amazing.
I think, but also realizing, right, you get different things from different friendships, no matter who it is in your life, different people. And you also should look for that in different mentors as well. You don't have to just have this one narrow-minded specific idea of a mentor, because maybe someone who challenges you differently is what you need in life, even if you don't know that you need it, right? So keeping an open mind. And I love what you said, someone who will champion for your humanity. I absolutely loved that. Loved it. So now getting into kind of a different topic, but still on the lines of role models. So celebrities, athletes, politicians, and other adults that we may not know personally can often serve as our role models. So what are your thoughts on having role models without that one-to-one, maybe in-person connection? What are the pros and cons of looking up to or idolizing these people? I would love to have Jalen speak first.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I mean, wow. Can we first talk about, okay, we all know it's 2020 and it's real out here, okay? But I'm gonna say less, but y'all know it's just real out here on all fronts and ends, right? We've never experienced a moment like this before in any of our lives. And it's just, I don't even want to put a term on what's going on, but listen, the best thing about today is that you can go on Instagram, you can go on YouTube, and you can search somebody up. You can type in the name of somebody who lives on the other side of the world doing something that interests you or that you love to do, and you can connect with these people. You can message them. You can watch them speak on topics that back in the day you would have to pay thousands of dollars for. You know, don't tell Harper, but no, I'm joking. Listen, I tell students all the time when they say, hey, Jalen, is there an audio engineering program at Harper? And I say, actually, there's not, but I'll be honest with you, bro or sis, you can actually just go on YouTube and learn how to produce yourself. Here's a list of producers, here's a list of engineers. Go watch these videos and you can teach yourself. I've now saved this person thousands of dollars just by pointing them in the direction of an influencer or somebody who can now become a cyber mentor or mentee, you know? And I think it's awesome, you know, but with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility, right? So Spider-Man, 2003, right? Great movie, the original one. But we won't get into that. I digress. So I feel like now, as easy as it is to find people who inspire you, there's still, there could be, and there is I don't ever want to group people together, but there are people out there who may be spewing information that does not serve the greater good in all industries and platforms, right? It's not just musicians, politicians, I mean, in each sector of life. And I think that we have to equip ourselves with the tools to know how to tell if a person has their greater good, or if they have the greater good in mind with the information that they're sharing with their influencerhood, you know? So I can have 50,000 people following my blog or 50,000 people on Instagram, but what is the content of my message saying? What is the substance of my being? And is it helping people? You know? And I think that we just have to learn how to find the people that, again, are serving the greater good. And honestly, I'd say that's like 99% of the population, right? But you still have to know that that 1% could be out there, and you know, you just have to be vigilant, but also be open, be curious, right? So I hope that answers your question about, you know.
No, definitely, right? That just brings us back to the idea of purpose, right? The purpose behind people's intentions, their decisions, what they're saying.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yes.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You're so correct. I thought of another thing too, right?
Please share.
You mentioned purpose, Riley. I think purpose and passion. I love going on YouTube and finding random dancers who are just passionate about what they do. And they're like pop locking, you know, doing all this. And then I'll immediately stand up and try to do it. Cause now I saw passion resonate. And I was like, how can I emulate this? You know? And I think that's one of the coolest things about, you know, being able to connect with influencers. So yeah, that's what I think.
Absolutely. Anything you'd add on, Brent?
Yes, so I understand the idea behind influencers. I get it. Like there are some people that I follow, and I actually follow one guy who talked about this exact thing. Is like, should influencers use their platform to to share social justice when their platform ordinarily doesn't do that? And his takeaway is yes, you should. And then I saw a Saturday Night Live skit on this weekend which they did that. They had somebody do it, and they used their platform to share the message, and then within seconds people were calling him and saying, take that down, you're losing people. So there is like a double-edged sword with that. I think about famous people, and like when you see people on the screen, you see people on TV, and you see people all over the social media, you instantly recognize them, right? Like in my entire life, I've seen two people that I recognized in person, and I'm sure that there were many more famous people that I've passed, but I only recognized two people. One of them was when I was in college, and it was Roy Schneider, which, if you remember the movie Jaws, it was that guy. And he was like sitting in some restaurant just watching, and I walked past him. I'm like, is that Roy Schneider? And he like did this. He like was reading his paper, and he looked up at me, and then he looked back down, and I just walked by. And the second person was Will Smith jaywalking across Fifth Avenue in New York City. And I was walking, and I was like, is that, and his buddy was with him. They were like sprinting across Avenue of the Americas or whatever. Like, I'm like, was that Will Smith just, jaywalking now? That was the only two times I've ever seen anybody and recognized him in person. And my point to that is, when you think about the role of influencers and the role of famous people in your life, you should ask yourself the question, if this person was in the room, would I want to confide in them? Would I want them to listen to me share about my life? Would they listen to me? Like, are they going to be engaged the way I would want them to be as a role model? And if you can say yes, well, that famous person is now your mentor. Is now your role model. Like, you can safely do that. Otherwise, there is a purpose for the famous people in our lives, and that could serve as somebody to be inspired by. Like, who has not been inspired by the story of Kobe? And whether you were a fan before him or not, before his death or not, you are probably a fan now. Like, just hearing about how his life was so fulfilled while he was growing up, while he was playing, and even after retirement, his message of Black Mamba and all that held, like that is an inspiration for so many people, and I just think about like the role that famous people play in our lives are something that we can control. Like, we can use the philosophies that people share however we want, and because we're at a safe distance from those people, we can choose to walk into those philosophies or walk away from them. And I think that's to the point that Jalen had said, is like, you got to pass that test of trust, right? Can you trust this person to be a part of your life? And I think that some people get really caught up in, this famous person saying something that is influential to you, but then turning around and doing something that is completely contradictory. You have the ability to be like, ooh, no, I don't want to be a part of that. And it doesn't have to impact your life, even though we know that some people do get hung up on every word that their role model says. So
Definitely, right. And it doesn't always sit well when that happens and we feel so connected to someone that we may not have that one-on-one connection with. But how do you work through that? That's a good segue. It's not our next question, but we are going to touch on that in a few moments. But I think so much of what you continue to say when you're sharing about this information, this last thing that you said is, if you were in the room with them, would you want to confide in them, and would they listen? Right? Knowing that the mentor-mentee relationship is a double-sided relationship. It's not just one person. And no, we may not always be able to answer that question when it's a famous person, a celebrity, a politician, an athlete. But if you follow them and you idolize them and you see what they believe in, and they're using that platform for the greater good, you may be able to answer that question, even if you don't ever meet them in person.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue to our next two questions. And it kind of reminds me of that phrase, don't meet your heroes. And I've always thought if you have to say that about your hero, are they worth being a hero, right? But you mentioned these people that you would confide in. And I think that has a lot to do with our next question. This year, we've lost a lot of significant public role models. So in just the past few months, we've lost Chadwick Boseman, who made a significant impact as Black Panther, among many other roles, as well as everything else he did outside of being an entertainment professional. We lost John Lewis, who spent his life fighting for racial justice. Naya Rivera, who portrayed one of the first interracial lesbian relationships on primetime television. We lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which, I mean, that speaks for itself, where we are now in the political space. You brought up Kobe Bryant, all these larger than life people. So what can you say about the loss of these significant role models for people, and what it means to lose them now when we're already so fragile socially, politically, emotionally, in every way we could be fragile as people? Bren, I'm going to let you take that one first.
Can we talk about Chadwick Boseman for a second? This guy made a war movie while he was dying of cancer. If anybody's ever seen The Five Bloods, Spike Lee's movie, holy moly. Like, there are some amazing people that do amazing things through amazing, extraordinary circumstances that we may never know about, right? And so, I go back to, we can certainly look up to public figures, role models. We can see what they do in their public life. And we can be inspired by them, or we can be disgusted by them, right? You have the ability to interpret what you're seeing. And we can grieve. I cried when Prince died, like, and if anybody has ever seen that man play, I mean, it was crazy. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of Prince, but I grew up listening to his music, like, throughout the course of my life. There's so many ways you can do that. Like, you can certainly grieve for the loss of somebody, and still go about your life, because it does come back to your own moral compass. And I'm going to borrow Jalen a little bit from this one. And I mean, this is kind of an adaptation of a C.S. Lewis quote, but I just kind of thinking that, like, the measure of a person's moral compass is determined by what they do when no one is watching, right? And you can take the influences of the public figures around you, but that you don't have to necessarily follow them like it's a doctrine, right? And I know that some people tend to go down that road where all they see is the influence of that person, no matter what, and that gets a little dangerous. Like, when you start to support and go behind somebody who has morally questionable philosophies and actions, that can be dangerous. But as an individual, you have the ability to interpret how you want. And if that means that you grieve for that public figure who recently died because you share the similar philosophies, that's okay to do that. It doesn't have to destroy your life as a result.
Right. I think I'm really glad that you brought that up. I think people have really conflicting feelings about grieving for people that they don't know. It almost sits uncomfortably. It's like, well, I didn't know them. I'm not their family. I'm not actually losing them personally, but it is a loss. It's a huge loss to lose someone that brought all these things to you, that brought inspiration, that showed you that you could accomplish things maybe you didn't think you could accomplish. So I think it's important that we do talk about that grieving process, and that we mention that it's what they do when no one is watching that is so important, because you're right, like with Chadwick Boseman, he was doing things that we didn't know about that were incredible, that were unbelievable. And I think we could say that for all these people that we've lost. It's what they were doing on a day-to-day basis that we didn't see, that culminated in the legends that they became. And so I think that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up. Jalen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think it's so important that we really cherish and embody the collective conscious around that person who created a legacy for themselves. And when you think about the Ruth Bader Ginsburgs and just everybody, across every spectrum, I think that the one thing that we can always keep in mind is that all of these people have led a life where, like what you said, Natalie, what you said, Swole, is like what they did behind the scenes is what we should honor and respect and create that for ourselves, while admiring the beautiful things that they've given us for their time on this earth. And I think it just comes back to us really presently living in the moment and taking a moment to ourselves to decide for ourselves to say, today I will live a life that will one day impact the legacy of my name or the names that follow after me, right? I always, as I'm getting older now, right, I'm starting to realize, like, I really want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a legacy that will allow people close to me, people in general, people whose lives, all of us being connected, being able to do things that go beyond just the bare minimum, but things that really impact the world for a greater good. And I think that's one thing that's been consistent with a lot of these people and people to come, because as humans, we admire and love people from thousands of years ago who have done amazing things. We admire people whose ideas still ring today from 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 10 years ago, a month ago. I think the best thing we can just do is just live presently and honor their legacies for what they built for their time here on earth, and then just cherish ours in the moment.
And Tessa, I saw you pop that chat in the chat. Like, sometimes you can also grieve their cause. It doesn't have to be grieving a person. It could be what they stood for. And that's real. That feels real. So I'm glad that you popped that in there. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you, Tessa.
Yeah, that goes directly along with the legacy. It reminds me of the line from Hamilton, who lives, who dies, who tells your story, that are you thinking every day about what you want to leave behind? And are you thinking about what people will do with what you left? And I think that's what all these people have done, right? They created legacies that people could follow, that people could take these causes and these stories and these ideas and continue fighting for them and pushing for them. And that's what makes a good mentor, right? Is what are you passing on to the people that you're working with, and what are they passing on to you? That two-way street. What are you leaving for the next generation?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Just noting the time, I know we only have about 6 minutes left, so we'll ask one more question to our speakers, and then we'll open up for closing remarks before we finish up around 8. But we felt like this was a good last question, since we know it's already been brought up and you were talking about it before. But on the opposing side of this loss, we've also seen a loss of role models through a division in thought. For example, recently J.K. Rowling has taken some concerning stances on trans rights and gender constructs that have been shattering a lot of her previous loyal fans. And that's just one of many of those celebrities, athletes, people in our lives that we've looked up to that we maybe didn't have that one connection with. But we also see this happening as these role models we've idolized may have taken political or social stances that were surprising or maybe opposing to our own or what we thought that they had previously. So what do we do when we feel serious disconnect with that role model and what they promote? So Jalen, we'd love to have you share your thoughts first.
Yeah. you know, I think the first thing to do is take a look at what actions they took, and take a look at what may have caused that action, and then make a determination for yourself to say, does this resonate with what feels right for me in my heart, in my mind? And if it does not feel well, if it does not appear well, you know, if you just get a bad vibe, then again, give yourself permission to exclude that energy from your being, right? Or from your, however you're able to even understand that these people are doing it in the first place, right? Um, you know, I think that with everything that's happening right now, right? Um, Again, right now we're living in such an unprecedented time of division, and so many things are coming to surface that people are having to deal with now, that have been kept under the rug for too long, that I feel like, you know, now we are experiencing a change of, we're experiencing a shift of the social paradigm, okay? And what that means is that in our lifetime, we will see what I believe will be the shift in humanity where people are able to expel those who aren't serving a greater good. And when I say expel, sometimes I use words that, you know, that are like really big, but when I say expel, let me describe what I mean. Because like Swell says, sometimes I get carried away with my words. Right? When I say expel, I mean we will say, hey, this person obviously doesn't care about the environment. So we need to make sure this person, and the reason why we determine they don't care about the environment is because of the actions that they've taken that are negatively affecting the environment. Therefore, we need to somehow figure out a way to collectively take this person out of the position to make decisions about the environment, because collectively we want to see the environment better. Hey, these people aren't serving the greater good for the race and culture side of things. We need to take them out of power and replace them with people who are serving the greater good. You know what I mean? And I think that that's just happening. It's starting to trickle in, right? Because for so long, you know, technology is such a beautiful thing now because we have the opportunity to share information on an instant moment. We have the opportunity to communicate with people across the world or shift the collective community of consciousness at one moment in time, right? And we can see it all happening in real time too. And I think that, you know, once we allow ourselves to be okay with speaking up against the unjust happening in the world, then we can realize that there are many others who are struggling, and we can put people in power who will influence the world in a much better way with their power. There's so many components, you know, to that question, and I think I will table it there for now.
If I may, it boils down to one word: vote.
Thank you.
And we are all over the place. I see you, Orlando Strong. Vote, baby. It matters. I see you, everybody. It matters, right? That's your voice, and that's the point that that I think Jalen was referring to is finding that voice. Well, you find your voice through our democracy. So I don't have much more to add to that because Jalen did a good job of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What I was hearing you say, Jalen, is that we can take that information, those opposing views, and we can let it hurt us, or we can take it and make action and utilize our voice to hopefully change something moving forward. And just like Brent said, voting is one way that we have that ability to use our voice and to hopefully make that action and change and see someone in position that has the idea of doing something for the good. So absolutely. Natalie, anything you want to add to wrap up our session?
I think this has been an amazing conversation. I think we've been through a lot of the details about finding mentors, finding role models, what that connection looks like one-to-one, or kind of in this public space of what you should look for and what you should exclude from your life, you know, the kind of energy you want around you. And I think we can all agree the energy here is what we want around us. That's why we all come together. I think CGTI and OS offer that opportunity to find those good connections and for us all to learn from each other, which is what we've been doing for 7 episodes now. And I think that really ties back. I think we're all mentors and mentees and role models for each other, which is a really special thing to have in these organizations. So thank you both for telling us, you know, your personal stories, as well as sharing these many, many, many words of wisdom with us. I think that, you know, hearing things like this, especially we've mentioned so many times, what's going on around us is really intense, and it's it can be really scary. And I think getting to think about those good feelings and our ability to use our voices and vote and find what works for us is very hopeful and optimistic, and something we definitely need to hear amongst all the noise. So thank you both for taking the time to share and be here with us.
If I share one more thing, and
Yes,
again,
please.
it's just kind of like, if I could pull it all together, because I know that we have a lot of adults in here that were at one time youth. I would think that we all are. At one time we were youth, and I hope that everybody, you know, had that person, right? A mentor doesn't necessarily need to be a part of your life all the time. Like, they don't need to live with you. I mean, you can certainly have that. Like, your mentor can be a family member, or it can be a close relative, or it could be a close friend, or whatever that may be. But it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be in that person's life 24/7. But having the ability to allow your mentee to try something, to fail, to process, to grow, to try again, that is the change that you want to see that that person grow into. And sometimes being able to detach yourself from the day to day that person is experiencing allows that person to come to you and vent and ask questions and try things that they might not be able to try within their own family structure. I feel like that is the relationship that Jalen and I had. You know, we stay connected. We stayed connected throughout all these years. But I don't know what he's doing. I didn't know that he was taking a shower a half hour before we did this yet already. I didn't know that. So, like, that's important to be able to have that that separation of total, complete life experience, because you might end up being that person that that your mentee ultimately goes to because they don't have anyone else to turn to.
Great distinction and perfect way for us to be able to close out and wrap up our session, letting you know that there are many ways to stay involved, and doesn't have to be constantly, doesn't have to be all the time. Sometimes mentors come and go as well, and knowing that you can find them throughout your life anywhere. Just want to say thank you once again to our 2 amazing speakers, Jalen and Brent. Thank you to all of you who joined, who were live in our session, and for being here to support Snowball and CGTI. Remember, the next episode 8, will be on November 11th. It's the second Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Please register, tell your friends, bring them here. We'd love to see a bunch of new faces every week or every month when we have them. But please welcome them, share the link. If not, I don't know where I was going with that, but Brent always says power of 3. So encourage you to try and bring 3 new people, whether they're family members, friends of yours, whatever that may be. Show them the link, ask them to come, take part of this conversation, just learn and grow together. We would love to have new faces on the show. But that's going to be it for our episode. Thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your night. We'll see you all next month. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.